I met Clara at a conference in San Diego. I was presenting a case study for a product launch that had gone better than expected, and she was on a panel about branding strategy. I don't usually pay attention to panel discussions, too much buzzword fluff, but she was different. No performance, no jargon. Just sharp, clear thinking. Confident in a way that wasn't loud. We talked during the networking mixer afterward. She had a glass of red wine in her hand and a smile that didn't look forced like everyone else's. I asked her what she thought of my presentation. She said, "You talk with your hands too much." Then she grinned and told me I did a good job. It moved fast after that. Not the reckless kind of fast, just easy, natural. We started flying back and forth, me from Chicago, her from Seattle, until one of us had to make a decision. I moved to her city. No hesitation. I'd never had a moment of doubt about her. We got married 18 months later. A small ceremony overlooking the Puget Sound, surrounded by a tight circle of people we actually liked. Clara handled everything. I remember standing at the altar thinking I'd never seen anyone look so composed and so alive at the same time. She had this air of assurance, like she knew exactly what she wanted and had already decided it was going to work. We bought a house in a quiet neighborhood outside the city. Mid-century, lots of windows, tucked among the trees. It needed some work, but Clara had an eye for design and I knew how to swing a hammer when needed. Over a few months, we made it ours, warm tones, curated furniture, clean walls. She picked out everything. I just paid and nodded, and it always came out perfect. We both worked hard, but we weren't defined by our work. Clara ran a boutique branding firm that focused on eco and wellness startups. I was in product development for a major consumer tech company. Our lives had structure, but never felt stiff. We made time for each other, always. We kept Sundays clear, no matter what, for brunches, errands, bookstore wandering, or just doing absolutely nothing together. No phones, no emails. Just us. We didn't have kids yet, but we talked about it. We weren't in a rush. We liked our life the way it was. Sometimes we'd sit out on the back deck with drinks and talk about names we liked or places we wanted to take our future children. It always felt like a conversation, never pressure. She had a few family members nearby, a couple of cousins she was close with, and her mother, who lived just an hour away. Her father had passed years ago, and she had a half-brother, Leo, who visited now and then. I only met him a few times early on. He lived a few hours away and was usually traveling for work, so he wasn't around much. Clara didn't talk about him a lot, but when she did, it was with fondness. "He's complicated, but he's mine," she once said. There was no tension, no strange silences. Our life was good. Solid. The kind of life people try to build and mostly fail to protect. And as far as I could see, everything we built was holding strong. Clara and I made a good team. Not in a cliché way, I mean, we actually functioned well together. We knew who did what without needing to talk about it. I handled most of the cooking, grocery runs, and anything involving bills or logistics. Clara was better at all the social stuff, coordinating plans with friends, remembering birthdays, organizing trips. Her memory was ridiculous. She once reminded my boss of his own wife's favorite wine at a dinner party. He was both impressed and slightly terrified. Our work schedules lined up well enough. I had a hybrid setup, 3 days in the office, 2 at home. Clara ran most of her meetings virtually unless she was presenting to a new client. It gave us breathing room. Even when we were busy, we knew how to find each other at the end of the day, usually on the couch, splitting a bottle of wine or watching something we weren't totally paying attention to. Clara always claimed she liked documentaries, but she'd be asleep halfway through. I'd keep watching, mostly out of stubbornness. We weren't big on drama. We never played games, never fought just to make a point. If something bothered one of us, we said it. It never turned into shouting. Clara didn't raise her voice, she didn't need to. She had that unnerving calm some people only fake. If I ever frustrated her, she'd just look at me a certain way and I'd feel the sting of it more than any argument. Vacations were usually short, well-planned escapes. A weekend in Napa. A week in Paris. A few days off the grid in British Columbia. Clara made itineraries like it was a competitive sport, and somehow they always included little surprises, a bakery I mentioned once, a private tour, a bookshop she knew I'd love. She paid attention. That was one of the first things I noticed about her when we met. She watched the world closely, and didn't forget much. Our friends called us unshakable. A few of them had already divorced and used us as the benchmark for what a real marriage should look like. I didn't take it too seriously, but I guess I understood why they thought that. We looked like what most people want, two people who like each other, understand each other, and haven't grown tired of being in the same room together. We hosted a lot. Not huge parties, but well-planned dinners. Clara loved a good table setup, candles, cloth napkins, handwritten name tags if the mood struck her. I'd handle the food, and we'd both rotate between the kitchen and the guests like we'd choreographed it in advance. It always felt natural. Effortless. Even when we didn't have people over, we made the most of evenings. She'd read on the couch while I played piano in the next room. Or she'd put on music while we cleaned up together, usually something vinyl and soft. Our routines weren't loud, but they were full. Satisfying in that quiet way that makes you forget to question them. There was no boredom. No distance. Clara's business had taken off over the past year. She'd signed 2 major clients in the wellness space, both of which came with PR features, panel invites, and a steady stream of new referrals. She never bragged about it, but I could see how proud she was. When her firm was mentioned in a national design blog, she acted like it was no big deal, but I caught her smiling while reading the comments. We celebrated with sushi and champagne on the deck. I told her she deserved it all, and she just shook her head and said, "We both do." She always said we when she could have said I. That meant something to me. Meanwhile, work on my end was steady. I was leading a new product team, which meant longer hours some days, but Clara never made me feel bad about it. If I texted her that I'd be home late, she'd send back a thumbs up and something like, "Don't forget to eat. Leftovers in the fridge." No passive-aggressive digs. No guilt. Just partnership. The only thing she ever asked for was that we protected our time together. Sunday mornings especially, those were sacred. We'd sleep in, make coffee slowly, and sit in bed reading or talking. Sometimes she'd ask big questions, "Where do you think we'll be in 10 years? Or, if you could live anywhere for 1 year, where would it be?" I always gave the same answer, "Anywhere, if it's with you." She'd roll her eyes at that and say I was full of it, but I knew she liked hearing it. Her family was still pretty distant. Her mom came by now and then, usually just for coffee and a quick update on life. Clara had a few cousins in town, but they were more social media clothes than real-life clothes. Leo, her half-brother, wasn't around much, still traveling for work, mostly East Coast. Once or twice a year he'd swing through, crash in our guest room for a night or two, and be gone before the weekend was over. Clara always looked happy when he was in town, but not overly so. Just relaxed. Like she could be her least filtered self with him around. I never minded it. Leo and I weren't close, but he was polite. A little quiet, but likable enough. When he visited, I stepped back a bit, let them have time. They didn't grow up together, and I knew how much that limited history meant to Clara. It wasn't a problem. Families are weird, and I'd never had any reason to feel off about it. She said they'd reconnected after their dad passed, got closer through grief. I respected that. I'd lost a parent too. I knew how those moments created strange, lasting ties. Clara always made it a point to say how grateful she was for the way I respected her space, with her work, her family, her head. She said I never made her feel trapped. I told her that's what real love looks like. And I believed it. Still did, then. We had trust. We had time. We had plans. We had everything. By the time fall came around, Clara had completely redone the backyard. She'd been talking about it since spring, sketching ideas on napkins and Pinterest boards, but I didn't think she'd actually tackle it on her own. One morning I woke up and half the patio furniture was gone. She was standing in the yard with her hair in a braid and a clipboard in hand, like she was directing a crew. She'd hired a landscaper, a carpenter, and a lighting guy, all without telling me. I wanted it to be a surprise, she said, smirking. You always say I need to delegate more. The end result looked like something out of a design magazine. Fire pit, vertical garden, hanging lights, soft seating. It became our favorite spot. We'd sit out there on cool nights with blankets and bourbon, talk about nothing for hours. She was always good at that, creating spaces that made people want to stay. We hosted more often. Friends from her industry came by, plus a few from mine. We mixed circles, and it always worked. Clara could carry a conversation with anyone, a marketing exec, an artist, a software engineer, and somehow make them all feel like they were the most interesting person in the room. I watched her sometimes from across the fire pit or the dinner table. Just watched the way people leaned in toward her, the way her laugh pulled people in. And I always felt lucky. Not in a desperate way. Just, solid. Proud, maybe. Like we'd built something real. The only person who didn't come by much was Leo. He'd visited once over the summer, just for a weekend. I remember Clara seemed unusually relaxed when he was around, like her shoulders dropped half an inch the second he walked in the door. They caught up, stayed up late talking in the backyard after I went to bed. I didn't think anything of it. They were siblings. She'd missed him. He left early that Sunday. We had brunch plans, and when Clara came back from dropping him at the airport, she brought croissants and my favorite coffee. One last indulgent weekend before we go back to clean eating, she joked. That's how she always was, intentional, thoughtful, good with timing. The week after that, I got swamped with work. Long days, late nights, back-to-back calls. She handled it. Picked up groceries, scheduled the cleaners, even brought me lunch once at the office. Said I looked like I hadn't blinked in a day. We had this rhythm, when one of us dipped, the other stepped in. And when things leveled out again, we planned a weekend away. Just the two of us, 2 hours north, a cabin near the lake. No phones, no screens. Just wine, books, and each other. She picked the place. I picked the wine. That weekend, we barely left the bed. She fell asleep on my chest both nights. On the drive home, she played old music from when we first met, that slow indie stuff she used to love. We sang along. I held her hand. Nothing about her felt far away. Nothing at all. It was nothing, at first. A Tuesday morning, mid-October. Clara was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone while drinking her smoothie, half listening as I read off some dates I needed to lock in for an upcoming product demo. I mentioned that my mom wanted to do dinner that Friday, and asked if she was okay with that. She nodded, but the kind of nod that felt mechanical. Then, after a beat too long, she said, "Sorry, what did you say?" I repeated it. She blinked, set her phone down, and said, "Yeah, sure. Friday's fine." Then she picked the phone right back up. It wasn't the moment itself. It was how out of character it felt. Clara was always locked in when we talked. If anything, she used to tease me for multitasking too much. But lately, I'd caught her slipping in and out of conversations more often. Still, I brushed it off. That Friday, dinner with my mom went ahead. But Clara begged off last minute, said she wasn't feeling great, a stomach thing. She looked pale, so I didn't press. I went alone. Texted her during the meal to check in. She responded right away, still queasy but resting. Thanks for letting me stay in. When I got home, the lights were low. She was wrapped in a blanket on the couch, watching an old comfort movie. I kissed her forehead. She felt warm. We didn't talk much that night, just curled up and let the quiet settle. The next morning, she seemed totally fine. Bright, energetic, asking if I wanted pancakes or real breakfast. I made a joke about her bounce-back time being suspicious, and she laughed. That's the power of 20 hours of sleep and 3 ginger teas, she said. Maybe it was. But that's when I noticed her phone was no longer left around like it used to be. Clara had never been guarded with it. She hated passcodes, left it face up on the kitchen counter, didn't care if I picked it up to play music or check directions. But lately, it was always near her. Face down. On silent. Still not locked, but always in reach. Once, she left it in the bathroom after a shower. I walked in to grab a towel and noticed the screen light up with a message preview that disappeared before I could read it. I didn't touch it. But something about the way it vanished, like it was never there, stayed in the back of my mind. Later that week, I casually asked who she'd been texting so much lately. She shrugged. Mostly clients. One of our new ones is needy. She made a face and went back to folding laundry. Totally normal response. Totally believable. But the next day, I saw her phone buzz again, this time while she was in the shower. Just a name, L, no last name. Just L. Could have been anyone. A client, a friend, someone from her networking group. Still, something about that initial stuck with me. Leo's name had always been saved in her phone as Leo. Full name. Unless that changed. Something was changing in the house, and it wasn't dramatic. Just, different. Clara had always been a consistent presence, her habits, her expressions, even the way she moved through a room. She was calm and fluid, like someone who knew exactly how she wanted to exist. But lately, there were small glitches in that rhythm. Not mistakes. Just pauses. Delays. She was quieter in the evenings. Less playful. She used to hum while she cooked or folded laundry, half songs, usually indie tracks from playlists she never updated. That stopped. Now she worked in silence. AirPods in more often. Music I couldn't hear. I asked her once what she was listening to. Just a podcast, she said. No follow-up. No detail. The conversation ended there. I started noticing the laundry was being done in small, separate batches. Not everything at once like usual. My things folded and stacked, hers nowhere to be seen. I assumed she was behind, or maybe washing certain items separately. But it didn't add up. Her scent had changed too. She used to wear the same light vanilla fragrance, barely noticeable unless you leaned in close. But lately, there was something stronger, sharper. Something floral. It caught me off guard the first time. I asked about it, and she waved it off. Sample from a new client, I'm testing it for a campaign. Reasonable. Except she kept wearing it. The L messages kept popping up too. Not often. Just once every couple days. I never looked. I never snooped. I never even thought of myself as someone who would. But I started recognizing the feeling that built in my chest whenever I saw her reach for her phone, pause, read something silently, then set it down and change the subject. It wasn't paranoia. It was something older than that. Instinct. One night, while brushing my teeth, I looked down at the guest towel hanging on the rack. It had been damp, twisted slightly. Not how I left it. Clara had her own towel in the master bath, she never used the guest ones. I opened the cabinet beneath the sink. Her travel bag was sitting there. Not empty. Not packed. Just, present. Like it had been used and put back in a hurry. I didn't ask her about it. I didn't want to seem like I was searching for something that might not exist. A few days later, Clara told me Leo would be in town again for the weekend. Last-minute trip, she said. Wants to catch a show downtown. She asked if I'd mind if he crashed in the guest room for a night or two. I said sure, of course. Why would I mind? It had been over a year since his last visit. She seemed excited. Not overly, just anticipatory. Like someone looking forward to a break from routine. He was set to arrive the following Friday. And for the first time since we got married, I didn't want him in the house. I didn't know why, exactly. But something in me was starting to brace for impact. Leo arrived late Friday afternoon. I got home just as Clara was finishing setting up the guest room, fresh sheets, candles on the nightstand, a folded towel on the edge of the bed like a hotel. She always went above and beyond when guests came, but this time it felt a little curated. Like she wanted everything to be perfect, but not in the way she used to. Not warm. Not welcoming. More prepared. He showed up around 6. Same as always, casual, friendly, hands in his jacket pockets. Clara greeted him at the door with a tight hug. Longer than usual. He looked over at me, nodded like everything was normal, and said, "Good to see you, man." I smiled. Said the same back. Nothing seemed off, not really. But from the second he stepped inside, the house felt crowded. Not physically, emotionally. The energy shifted. Clara was bright, animated, focused on him. I tried to ignore it. I poured drinks, we ordered Thai, we all sat around like we'd done once or twice before. But something was wrong in the silences. They shared glances. Quick, subtle, quiet ones. Not dramatic, not obvious. But enough. Once, she made a joke about something from their childhood, something I didn't get, and he laughed before she finished. That wasn't the strange part. What got me was how quickly she looked over to see if I noticed. I pretended not to. That night, I said I was tired and went to bed early. I didn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling while I heard them downstairs, voices low, not laughing exactly, just talking. The sound of ice in glasses, the occasional creak of the floor. Nothing damning. Nothing I could call out. But I couldn't shake the weight in my chest. The next morning, Clara was already up. Coffee made, showered, dressed, full energy. She looked at me and smiled like everything was fine. "Leo and I are going to walk around Pike Place, maybe grab lunch," she said. "You coming?" I said I had work to catch up on. She didn't argue. Just nodded, grabbed her coat, and left with him. They were gone most of the day. When they came back, she kissed my cheek like she hadn't spent the last 6 hours with someone who made the air around her shift. Later that night, I stepped outside to take out the recycling, and when I came back in, I saw them sitting on the couch, side by side, not touching, not talking, just looking at something on her phone. She locked the screen when she saw me walk in. I acted like I didn't notice. After Leo went to bed, she came upstairs and changed in the bathroom instead of our bedroom. She said it was just because she wanted to brush her teeth and not disturb me. But when she slid into bed, I could feel the space between us like a wall. She fell asleep fast. I didn't. I stayed awake wondering why her hair smelled different again. Why she hadn't touched me once all day. Why I couldn't stop wondering what exactly was going on under my own roof, and how long it had already been happening. Leo was supposed to leave Sunday afternoon. Clara made him breakfast that morning, waffles, eggs, fruit in a perfect little bowl. She poured his coffee before he even sat down. I pretended to read emails, but I watched everything. Every gesture. Every glance. They barely looked at me. When I spoke, Clara answered like she was mentally somewhere else. Leo just nodded along, checking his phone between bites. They said they were going to take a short walk before he packed. Stretch our legs, Clara said, already grabbing her jacket. Cool, I said. I'll be here. They were gone for 2 hours. When they got back, Clara looked flushed. Not just from the cold, from something else. She said they'd walked further than planned and needed to shower before dropping him off. I nodded, went back to my screen, and waited for the house to go quiet. Around noon, I got a message from my client canceling our Monday meeting. I took it as a sign. I don't know what pushed me, maybe instinct, maybe that part of your brain that finally stops making excuses. I told Clara I had to go into the office for a few hours. She barely looked up. Drive safe. I didn't go to the office. I waited 10 minutes, turned the car around, parked down the street, and walked back. My key in the door felt heavier than it ever had. The house was silent. I moved slow, across the entryway, through the kitchen. Dishes still in the sink. The hallway dim. I passed the guest room. Empty. Then I heard it. A soft, rhythmic noise coming from upstairs. I didn't let myself hesitate. I walked up, one step, then another, until I reached our bedroom door. It was closed. I didn't knock. I turned the knob and stepped inside. And there they were. Clara. My wife. And Leo. Her half-brother. Naked. Twisted in the sheets. His hands on her hips. Her head turned just enough to see me standing there. She froze. He pulled back like a coward. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Her face was panic. Not shame. Not regret. Panic that she'd been caught. I stepped back and closed the door. I didn't shout. I didn't break anything. I walked downstairs, grabbed my keys, and drove to a hotel. Booked a room. Sat on the bed. And stared at the wall for 20 full minutes before I let my hands stop shaking. Whatever was between us, the dinners, the deck lights, the lazy Sunday mornings, it ended in that room. Not because she cheated. But because she chose him. And suddenly, I knew what came next wouldn't be quiet. I didn't go home that night. I stayed in the hotel room, ordered nothing, turned on the TV just to have noise. But my mind wouldn't sit still. Every second replayed in full color, the way Clara's back arched when she saw me, the way Leo's hands scrambled like he could hide what I'd already seen. They didn't look surprised that it happened. Just surprised they'd been found. By morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I went home just after 8 a.m. The house was quiet. Clara was in the kitchen, like nothing happened, hair brushed, robe tied, pouring coffee. I didn't give her time to speak. You have 15 minutes to pack whatever you can carry. And then you're out. She blinked like she hadn't heard me. Can we please talk? No. You don't get words anymore. Leo wasn't there. Coward must have slipped out in the night. I followed her upstairs, watched her fumble through drawers, shaking hands trying to zip a bag. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't touch a thing. When she tried to stop and cry, I pointed at the clock. She left 15 minutes later, head down, without looking back. Then I grabbed my phone and posted everything. I didn't name her directly. But I said exactly what happened. My wife slept with her half-brother. In our bed. While I was working to support her dreams. While she smiled in my face. While I trusted her with everything. I posted it with pictures, not of the act, but of them on the couch that weekend. The ones I'd taken to send to a friend. Innocent at the time. Now, proof. I blurred faces just enough for deniability. But people knew. And it didn't take long for it to spread. By noon, it was everywhere, shared, reposted, commented on. I didn't care. I wanted it loud. I wanted the people who praised our perfect marriage to see what it really was. Then I messaged Leo's company. I knew where he worked: high-end PR, image-conscious, zero tolerance for scandal. I sent a brief message with a screenshot and said, "Thought you'd want to be aware of the kind of reputation your senior associate is building." Within hours, a reply. He was no longer affiliated with the company. I smiled for the first time in 2 days. By evening, Clara's inbox was full. Friends. Colleagues. Even her clients. She tried calling once, I let it ring. Then blocked her. Her mother called next. I picked up. Told her everything. She cried. Said she didn't understand. I said, "Neither do I." I packed the rest of Clara's things into boxes. Left them on the front lawn. Changed the locks. Called my lawyer. Divorce was already in motion. No mediation. No negotiation. I wasn't interested in working through it. This wasn't a mistake. This was a decision she made again and again, with someone she called family. And now, everyone knew. By the end of the week, the story had burned through every circle we were part of. Some people reached out quietly, offering support. Others just disappeared. A few mutual friends messaged me saying they were shocked, didn't see it coming, hoping we were okay. I responded to none of them. I didn't need pity. I didn't want conversation. I wanted silence. Clara didn't try again. After I blocked her number, her email came once. A long wall of text. I didn't read more than the first 2 lines. She said, "I know there's nothing I can say that will make this right." That was enough. I closed it, archived it, and let it sit in digital purgatory. Leo was invisible. No calls. No attempts to explain. I don't know where he went, and I don't care. My house felt different. Empty, but not in the way you'd expect. Not hollow. Just cleared out. Like when a storm finally passes and everything's wrecked, but at least you can see the ground. I threw out the sheets. The pillows. Her perfume. Every trace. I repainted the bedroom the next day, not because I'm sentimental, but because the walls felt tainted. I moved furniture. Rearranged the books. Took control of the space again, one drawer at a time. The hardest part wasn't anger. It was trying to understand the why. Not just the betrayal, but the depth of it. The twisted intimacy of it. She could have had an affair with a stranger, a coworker, someone far away from our world. But she chose him. Someone from her bloodline. Someone who had been in my home, eating my food, sleeping under my roof. What kind of person does that? My therapist told me to stop chasing closure, that sometimes people do things not because of something we lack, but because of something broken in them. Maybe that's true. But that explanation doesn't put me back together. Nights were quiet. I'd stay up late reading, watching dumb movies, letting the TV run in the background just to drown out my own thoughts. I didn't cry. Not once. Not out of pride. Just because the grief never found its way to the surface. It got stuck somewhere deeper, heavier. I still ran into people in town. One guy from the gym nodded awkwardly and said, "Man, saw what happened. That's rough." I nodded back, said, "Yeah," and walked away. No one says much now. Which is exactly how I like it. I started running again. Every morning, 5 miles before the sun is fully up. That's when things make the most sense, alone, headphones in, breath steady. Forward movement. No noise. I've already filed everything. Divorce, division of assets, ownership of the house. No alimony. No joint accounts. She hasn't contested any of it. I think she knows better. I'm not healed. Not even close. But I'm not stuck either. And for now, that's enough. It's been 6 weeks since I walked in on them. The headlines faded, the reposts stopped, and even the group chats that lit up in the first 72 hours went quiet. The internet moved on, the way it always does. But I didn't post again. Not about it. Not about anything. Once the story did its work, I let it go. Clara signed everything. The divorce was finalized without a single call or protest. The house is mine. The accounts are separated. She left behind a few boxes she never came back for, old art supplies, some backup hard drives, a coat I bought her in Italy. I gave it all to Goodwill. Leo never surfaced. Last I heard, he was staying with someone in Denver. No job. No prospects. Just a name burned through a few too many inboxes. I don't know what his end of this looks like. It's not my concern. What I do know is that I don't feel like a victim. I feel like a man who walked through fire with his eyes open. And survived. It's strange how quickly the body adjusts to a new routine. You'd think losing a partner would feel like a limb being torn off, but in reality, it's more like a fog clearing. I get up. I run. I make breakfast. I go to work. I sleep. No tension in the silence. No side glances. No double meanings. I still get the occasional message, from people who knew us, from strangers who read the post. Some want to share their own stories. Others just say, "Thank you for saying it out loud." I respond when I have the energy. Sometimes I just let the words sit. One night, I found myself scrolling through old photos. Not to torture myself, I just wanted to remember what was real. And weirdly,